we could fly.
Welcome back to Have a Cup of Johanny. This season isn't about hustling harder. It's about coming home to yourself, to your voice, to your breath, to the quiet truth that you're still here and you're not starting over. You're starting again. This is your space to reflect, reset, and remember who the hell you are. So pour your cafecito and let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Have a Cup of Johanny podcast. This month, we are talking about lessons that self-doubt taught me. And today's episode is fresh. It's so fresh. I mean, literally fresh. It happened this past weekend. So I spent almost the entire weekend, well, I would say the entire weekend, deep in pre-order prep for The Ordinary Bruja. I knew I wanted to take advantage of this long weekend for that purpose, just so that way I can get all those pre-order goodies already set. So when the book comes in, then all I have to do is pack and print the shipping labels and they're good to go. So I have bookmarks, manifestation cards, character art, and oh my goodness, was self-doubt really loud this weekend. Let me tell you, because it was bad. So everywhere I turned, that small voice was there. And I have this thing that it's in my head that goes something like this. Your creativity only goes as far as writing. And I even said it out loud this weekend. That's how bad it was. And my husband looked at me and he was like, no, it doesn't. That's how bad it was. He saw that I was really struggling. And when he said that, I had to take a pause. I had to take that little moment. And it made me realize how easily I let self-doubt convince me that my limits are permanent. Because truth is, I'm creative beyond the page. I've taught myself things, hard things I never thought I'd touch. For example, I learned Canva. I learned Photoshop before it became too expensive, and then I had to let it go. Then I found Affinity and learned both publisher and designer. I'm no expert, but I know enough to lay out a design and create my own promo graphics, and that's usually what I use it for. I've learned audio editing to make this podcast that you're listening to. I've learned copywriting for my own marketing. I figure out printer settings, paperweights, bleed margins, things that once terrified me. And my husband was looking at me in awe when I was talking to a binding press not too long ago because I was just spewing out all these things, my bleed, my margins, all these like the binding, perfect bound, and using all these words and things that I didn't know before, but that I have taught myself in order to be my own publisher, be my own powerhouse until I can eventually hire people in. And this weekend, when my printer wasn't giving me what I needed, I spiraled. I completely spiraled. And there's no other way to say that. It's like I said, I had the weekend to do this stuff. And I have the bookmarks, the character art, the manifestation card, a thank you card that I usually put in all of my orders, as well as design for the deleted scene in The Ordinary Bruja, one that features Marisol and Kia. In my head, these plants just look so fabulous, so absolutely gorgeous. And then I get in here, and I don't know, it was this entire weekend. It started with the cards, and then all of a sudden, it's like I don't have the right card stock. I ran out of bone white, so I was like, it's okay. I'll just do the yellow antique cards, and it's okay. Pretty sure people will be all right with having two in bone white and then two in antique yellow. And I was like, I'm good. I'm good with that. So I overcame that. And then I found out that my printer is not like heavy duty enough to grip the cardstock that I like, because I had the 65-pound cardstock and I was like, oh, that's so flimsy. I would prefer, for the customer to have like a stronger one, especially for the bookmarks. I was okay with the 65-pound one, and that's what I have for the character art and for the manifestation card, as well as for the thank you card. I'm using the 65-pound one, and that's fine for that. But for the bookmark, it just felt like super flimsy and I wanted like the heavy duty one. So I go ahead and go started. I have everything that I need, or so I thought. I have my Cricut ready. I just like my entire office is kind of like this arts and crafts store. If you look at it, I have the Cricut next to the printer. On my floor, I have all my cardstock that I have bought, as well as my Cricut sticky plastic thing that you put your stuff on it so that way the Cricut can cut it. I have everything here. My little kit to tweeze out and pull out things when the Cricut cuts. I was ready, or so I thought. And once again, in my mind, this is perfect. I envision myself going through the steps so perfectly with so much ease. I'm like, this is the easy thing. The hard thing was the rewrites, the writing, the rewrites, the waiting for the editor and then rewriting again. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that was the hardest thing. This is the easy stuff because it's just creating, printing. God, I was so gullible, but that's usually how I think. But I don't realize that it's like the thing that I've been doing the longest is writing. So, in essence, the writing is the easiest thing for me to do. The other stuff, which I didn't start doing until recently when I started publishing and doing these campaigns, really, that's when really started getting into Cricut and doing the arts and crafts stuff. So I've been writing way longer than I've been doing the Cricut arts and stuff, creative things adjacent to the publishing side of this. But in my mind, it's another deal. And I find out that at first I was like, well, I don't have the cardstock. Let me go get the cardstock, because I didn't have the specific cardstock. I even ordered black cardstock, but then I found out that you needed a special printer, which I don't have, that can actually like cut into and then put white on it so that way you can see the white text, because I really wanted like black bookmarks and then the design in it and then the words of affirmation that I have in there to be white, so it's on theme with the book, black and white. But then I was like, no, that's beyond what I'm willing to put in right now. I'm not going to get a printer of that kind, although I would want to, but right now it's not in the budget. So I'm like, no. So then I let that go. I just left that cardstock there for one of those other projects I may have. And then I went ahead and got 110 from Michael's, right? 110-pound cardstock, because that's what I felt I needed for the bookmark. And I was right. I do need that. But what I wasn't accounting for was that, like I said, my printer, it's not those heavy duty printers, is a home printer essentially. And the wheels, the traction for it is not strong enough for such a heavy paper, and it doesn't have an outside feeder, and after getting frustrated and calling my husband over like 2 times, I was like, look, and then I didn't want to force it and then mess up the printer to where I can't even use it for the other purposes that I use it, print out documents, contracts and things like that. So I was like, let me not mess it up. I did a little bit of Googling and found out that it was that sometimes just printers don't have that capacity to pull heavy paper in. And then I went through the settings and noticed that there is no settings for that, which then really validated to me that this printer is not meant to do that. And like I said, I didn't want to push it. So I was like, I guess I'm buying some bookmarks. And that's what I did. But not before I spiraled and went crying to my husband because it was just so difficult. The realization of how difficult it was hit me when I realized that. And I just left my office and went over to my husband to seek some comfort. And it was then that I had that moment where it's like, I'm just crying. And I'm like, I guess I'm only good at writing. And me just saying that right now, I'm like, wow, I really talk to myself really mean. Like, that's horrible. And I'm glad my husband was there too, was like, no, you're not. You've done other things as well. And that pulled me out of that downward spiral of self doubt, of thinking that my restrictions, my capabilities are permanent and that I can't grow beyond that, which was a lie. And that's what self doubt I noticed was doing to me, was trying to keep me in this lie of believing that I have reached some sort of cap. Like this is as far as I could go and that's it. And nothing else can be fixed and nothing else can be done. And as it happens when I get that frustrated, it's like certain things going on in my mind. I know that it is not right. I know that's not factual, but I still feel it. I still can't get away from feeling it and hearing that voice. So then I actively do things or talk to myself internally in order to combat that. Because I know, like, unless I do that, it won't go away. It will just stay there. And I will just spiral into a depressive episode where I'll feel like there's nothing else I can do. It's kind of like a hopeless feeling. So I went and sat down. I closed my laptop, and this is something that I do when I get this frustrated. Just close my laptop. Sometimes I take a nap. This time I didn't because it's just the pressure was on. I needed to make all these goodies, but I knew that I needed to take that break. So I went to the living room, got on my chair, and just reclined and inwardly just talk to myself and really back up what my husband told me out loud, which was, no, you're not. That's not true. And then I remember just thinking about all the other things. And it was like, I don't know how to explain it. I feel like it's so dumb because I know all these facts about me. But in that moment, it's like I don't remember them. All I'm focusing on is what I'm lacking. All I'm focusing on is what is wrong in that moment. But I know that I've done all this other stuff. It's just I'm so stuck on this one piece of information that I don't see the other stuff. I don't remember the other stuff. And that's why, like I'm saying, it's so dumb when I think about it now, post-mortem kind of investigation that I'm having with y'all. Because I know, like, I learned Canva from scratch, not knowing anything. I know before that, I learned Photoshop until I thought Photoshop was easier than Canva. Until I learned that Canva was way easier. Then when I noticed that I had to pay like monthly for Photoshop, I was like, oh no, not gonna do it. Once again, not in the budget. And then I went and found Affinity Designer. And I think it was like early days to where it's like $50, right? And then you get the second program, at a discount. I was like, hell yeah. And I don't have to pay a monthly subscription. I'm like, I'm sold. And little by little, I started learning it. I started putting book covers together, I started fixing some things and then just utilizing that. Like all my book covers that I put on the Ingram Spark format, I throw it there. That's how I do it. Affinity Publisher, put the format, put my designs in there, get text if I don't get the text from the artist, from Creative Fabrica, and just play around on the screen until it looks good. It looks like it fits. And that took me years. And to this day, I still watch YouTube videos on certain things because the program is vast. At least for me, it is. And I learned that, I learned that as an adult. And I was proving myself all of this as I was trying to come up from that downward spiral that I was having. And sure enough, little by little, through each example that I was giving myself to prove that thought wrong, it was almost like I was lifting myself out of that cloud. And then when I was able to lift myself out of the cloud, this is what happens, people. It's like my mind clears, and all of a sudden now I have a way out. I have a way to do things. And what I decided when it comes to this was like, you know what? I'm not going to get the printer for it. At least I know that that's what I need when it comes to this problem set. And when I do save enough to upgrade my printer, then that's what I'll do. And I'll make sure that it's a printer that can do all the stuff, the office stuff that I needed to, as well as the heavy duty stuff, the arts and crafts stuff, as I like to say. And if not, then I'm going to keep this one anyways for the house. And I'll have that for contracts and forms and all those other things that I can do with this one, and then just have the other one for the heavy duty arts and crafts. But that's not going to happen anytime soon, right? So once I was able to lift myself from that downward spiral, then I was able to go online and see if they have any discounted wholesale, high quantity bookmarks that are Gothic theme, and I found a few. This is where I miss El Paso, because El Paso has this thing where it's like mayoría, these stores that they sell bulk stuff. And I'm like, I know I would have been able to find on the low too. It's so cheap over there. I know that I'll be able to find all these little things, these little notebooks, these little, all these little things to put into my pre-order campaign. But alas, I'm not there. I'm in San Antonio right now. And I don't think they have something like that here. I don't think they have Five and Below and things like that. And that's just kind of like full price. So, nevertheless, I found the things that I couldn't print and then just like focus on printing those things that I could, which is the character art and the thank you notes and the manifestation card. And what that specific moment taught me was really that I needed to prove myself when I found myself in that moment of like completely spiraling to the point where I wasn't believing in my own capabilities. I was believing the lie that my brain was trying to feed me in that moment. And that was making me kind of depressed and frustrated. So I needed to prove myself wrong through factual proof. And then as I did that with various examples, I think I used like 4 examples, if I remember correctly, then I was able to kind of come out of that dark cloud per se, and was able to think clearly and find an answer to the problem that I had. But that was not the only problem that I had. Like I told you all, I've been looking at Affinity videos quite a lot, like for 2 weeks, going on 2 weeks right now, taking notes and all of that. And I want to have a deluxe book cover for The Ordinary Bruja next year. So that way I can do kind of like quick release of the deluxe version along with the Forgotten Bruja to kind of like keep momentum going for this trilogy, Las Cerradoras. And I have it all planned out, like my publishing calendar is 3 years out right now because I have each book, set for each of the year and then the deluxe version in between and so forth, right? So I have it mapped out in that way. And I was like, well, let me start working on the book cover because, like my husband says, I change book covers like I change socks. So I was like, let me start working on it now, putting something together now until I love it. And I either keep what I have or I give it to an artist to say, look, I want something like this, so that way they kind of understand what I'm going for. And I did that with The Ordinary Bruja. I created something, and then that's kind of like one of the examples that I gave them. And then I also gave them, other examples and other graphics and things like that that kind of fit the vibe. Because I've noticed from the very first time that I went to 99 Design for Mrs. Franchise Ring to do that, I didn't have much of that. And what ended up happening is that I got a lot of like hit and miss that I think I could have just streamlined a little bit better by being more specific on what I wanted. And I learned that lesson then. And that's what I've been doing ever since, just being a little bit more detailed. So that way that designer understands what I'm looking for, but always with the option of like, hey, if you see that this doesn't fit, or if you know of a better layout or color scheme or design that fits this genre better, then let me know. I'm open to a conversation because I realize that I don't know everything. Definitely designing is not my forte, but I do know what looks good and what looks bad, mostly what I don't like and what I do like. Right. So so that's the way that I go about doing book covers. So thinking like, let's do it, with the intent first to hopefully do it all myself. So that way I can save that money, but knowing that that possibly won't be able to happen. But either way, it's okay because I'll have enough time to save up for it because this is not happening until next year. But I do like to get ahead of the ball per se, right? Just like I tap into an editor now so that way I can get on their calendar for next year for the Forgotten Bruja. You see what I'm saying? So that I like to work ahead or schedule things ahead, and it keeps me on track that way. So I go to Affinity Photo and I'm like, and this is after the whole bookmark fiasco. And I'm like, okay, I know I haven't worked on Affinity Design. I'm sorry, I don't have photo. I need to get photo. So I have 2 out of the 3. So I go into Affinity Design. Mind you, I've always been in Affinity Publisher more than design. Design, it was maybe once, twice, 3 times that I've gone in shading or something specific, right? That I can get from that one. And I Google how-tos. I go into YouTubes when I get stuck because all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put a mirror to align to the lines of a wall. These 2 images are stock images that are separate, right? And I'm trying to align the mirror so that way it seems as if it was part of that wall all alone, right? All along, I'm sorry. And I Googled it and I realized that there's a way to do it on Affinity Design. And I go ahead and look for that. And I spend like, I want to say 10 minutes on this, y'all. And my frustration just like rises with each try, each new try. And every single time I take this deep breath, right? And go ahead and try again. And until I feel like my frustration has gotten too out of hand to where like I just need to step away. And that's what happened here. And it was several things that collude me in that I may not have the, once again, the equipment, but this time the software necessary to do this. And still, because soy cabeza dura, I'm stubborn, I went ahead and was like, nope, nope. I'm gonna go ahead and get it. I'm gonna do it. I'm just not seeing where that particular step is at. I made the icons bigger. I did all this stuff and I still couldn't find it. And then finally I come across I don't know if it's from Google or a video, but I was like, why can't I find this? I forgot what it's called. And I think it says something about the version of the program in there. And then that's when like the light bulb went out. And it was like, you need to have version, I think 2 or 3 or something like that. And I go into my about and it is version 1 point something. And I'm like, Jesus. And I'm like, okay, well, let me update it. And I cannot update it because Affinity is doing something, and hopefully this is not true. Hopefully they don't turn into a subscription thing like Adobe. Hopefully they do not. But I saw a YouTuber talking about how Affinity put a pause on buying any of their products until October 30th when they'll have this announcement. And people are thinking the worst when it comes to that announcement. So am I. And I had seen that already when I was watching all those YouTube videos on Affinity to learn more because I knew I was going to get to this weekend to do all this arts and crafts. So I was prepping myself, educating myself for this. But I missed that. I missed checking the version that I have so that way I can see if it's capable of doing what I need it to do. Just like I took for granted the version of printer that I had, and I just figured that it was going to be able to manage cardstock, heavy cardstock, and it cannot, So these are like crucial steps that I'm making a note to make sure I check for next time I'm having these projects that I have the equipment, the hardware and the software necessary to do these arts and crafts, to do these products that I want to create, you know. And and I realized then that I just didn't have the software, but not just that, I cannot get the software because all Affinity products are stopped until October 30th. So I'm stuck like Chuck. So what do I do is I reach out on threads for possibly designers, that are on a sort of economical budget. So that way I can do this for next year, once again, to get on their calendar because I see that I'm going to have some roadblocks. And I'm thinking worst case scenario as well. If they do go into a subscription service and then I just have to hold tight with the versions that I have, then I won't be able to create the things that I want to create and to make this book cover like the best that I can make it. And for a deluxe version, I really want it to be like the best that it can be. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like, for sure, I was tallying all that up, and I'm like, and I have enough time to save up so that way the designer can make this book cover for me that will be released next year, and I'm good to go. So that's what I did. So in both of these instances, kind of like the lesson was first not to get stuck, feeling sorry for myself because that didn't help at all, and instead to prove self doubt wrong. Because even when I don't have patience, I have persistence, and that's worth more. You heard me talk about grit, that's worth way more. And sometimes it's okay as well to tap into other resources so that way you can get this product off the ground like I did. I hit my online shop so that way I can get some bulk bookmarks that fit the ones that I wanted to create myself. I tap into book cover designers for the deluxe book cover that I was trying to do and design that I was trying to make. Guess what? I tap Staples for that at $2.28 per copy. That's way cheaper than all the ink and all the time and effort and double-sided tape that I would need to do, that I would need to get in order to create this. It would have been more expensive if I created than they created, you see? So I taught myself that it isn't about erasing self-doubt, but it's about catching it before it gets too comfortable. It's okay to outsource certain things when you've identified that it is more economical or beneficial for somebody else to do this one thing. And that doesn't mean that you're not enough. And it doesn't mean that this is something that you cannot do. It is just something that you cannot do in that moment or with the resources that you currently have. And you know what? Thinking about everything that I went through, I realized that that's exactly what The Ordinary Bruja is about. Because Marisol's journey mirrors this so closely. So closely. Like, she keeps second guessing herself and her own power until she finally realizes that believing in herself is the most magical thing she can do. And in a way, I kind of did that this weekend and a little geeked out that I'm following in my character's footsteps. And I think every creative, every parent, every dreamer needs that reminder that self doubt loses power every time you act anyway. So if you're listening to this while wrestling with your own version of I can't, prove yourself wrong. Start small, ask for help, try the thing again because you're capable of more than your fears letting you see. And speaking of doing the thing, my novel, The Ordinary Bruja, is available for pre order right now. So, all these goodies that you just heard me say that I accomplished this weekend and that I have coming in the following week are ready for the pre orders. Advanced readers have already called it a very important book. And when you pre order, you'll get some amazing extras. You heard me talk about it. A sign, a deleted scene featuring Kia and Marisol, beautiful character cards, bookmarks, and a manifestation card. And this is my way of saying thank you for believing in this story early. You can pre-order your copy at haveacupofjohanny.com. You can email me as well at joa@haveacupofjohanny.com or hang out with me on TikTok there at the Book Bruja or at a Cup of Johanny, or you can find me on Instagram at Have a Cup of Johanny. Until next time, remember, self-doubt can visit, but it doesn't get to live there. You need to make sure you show it the way out. All right, bye.
Oh, we could fly.
If today's episode spoke to you, share with somebody who's finding their way back too. And if you haven't yet, visit haveacupofjohanny.com for more stories, blog posts, and the books that started it all. Thank you for being here. Until next time, be soft, be bold, and always have a cup of Johanny.